So we have talked about if you're given a sinusoidal function, you are asked to graph it. And that could involve stretches, flips, and shifts. So now what we're going to do is go the other way. What happens if you're given a graph and you have to find the equation? We've done this with several other functions since the beginning of the year. Okay? What I would suggest you do, well, first of all, remember, sinusoidal function is going to take the form this. And of course, we have to find the values of A, B, H, and K. I would suggest you do it in this form to find the letters. A, B, and H. Or cabbage. Remember, K is the midline. A is the amplitude, yes. B is the period. And H is the horizontal or phase shift. So in this one, well, let's find the midline. Remember, that's the horizontal line that splits the sinusoidal graph in half. So that would be here. That's the midline. What's the value of K? 0. In other words, we don't have to write anything at the end. Right? The amplitude, look at the graph again. Remember, the amplitude is the distance, no positive or negative, from the midline to either the max or the min. So pick a max or pick a min. Find the distance, which would be 1. Which technically we don't have to write, because times 1 is just the same as writing nothing. Now B, remember, we had to find the period by doing 2 pi divided by B. Now we're going the other way around. We know, we know that the period equals 2 pi for B. That's showing already. Well, how would I find B? Well, solve this equation for B. Times both sides by B. Those reduce to 1. Divide both sides by the period. And B is always going to be 2 pi, whatever the period is. And because we have the graph, we can find the period. Would you all agree that a cosine graph, remember it starts high and finishes high, goes from here to here, right? Starts high, goes to the minimum, comes back to the max. The question is, how long is that? So doesn't that mean that we have to find the value of one notch? Okay. How much is 2 notches? You're given on the graph. 5. So what would 1 notch be? Half a pi or pi over 2? Okay. So how long is the period? 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, or 2 pi. So the period in this graph, or sorry, the value of b in this graph will be 2 pi divided 2 pi, which is 1. So in order to find the period, you're going to have to know the value of 1 notch. And you're going to have to know that too, if there's a phase shift. Because in this one, there is. Normally, the graph, cosine graph, starts here, right? But it started 1 notch to the left. How much is 1 notch? Pi over 2. To the left, negative pi over 2. So that means h is negative pi over 2. Now you've got everything. So the graph is going to be y equals a, which is 1, which we don't have to write. Remember, it's a cosine graph. And then inside is b, which we don't have to write because it's also 1. But we do have to write the phase shift. X subtract this, which changes it to x plus this. The midline is 0. I don't have to write plus 0. Done. So that's how we would do all of these. This one, we're asked to write a sine function. What's k? Well, it's going to be here. That's where it splits it horizontally into 2 pieces, equal pieces. K is 0. I don't have to write it, actually. K. 4, because it's from the midline to any max or min. So the distance there is 4. K and A are usually pretty quick to find. B, we use the formula. To find B, it's going to be 2 pi divided whatever the period is. So we've got to get the period from the graph. How long does it take to complete 1 cycle? Well, look for a sine cycle. Remember, sine starts at the midline, goes up, back to the mid, goes down, back to the mid. So here's a sine one right here. Sorry, stops here. Here's a sine one right here. And it's 4 notches long, isn't it? Well, how much is that? How much is a notch? Here's how we can figure this out. 4 notches is 2 pi, isn't it? So isn't it 2 pi? Or to find the value of 1 notch, 4 notches is 2 pi, which means halfway is pi, and then halfway again is pi over 2. We're actually going to need that for the phase shift, okay? So 4 notches, pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, which is 2 pi, which we've already established. So 2 pi divided 2 pi is just equal to 1, which means we don't have to write e. And finally, h. Remember, a sine graph starts on the y-axis, right? This one did not start on the y-axis. It started 2 notches to the right. So how much did it move? Well, pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, or pi. It moved pi. And because it moved to the right, it's positive. There's all your stuff. So now we just write our equation. Y equals A, which this time there is a value, 4. Remember, it's sine that we were asked. Normally we open a bracket and put B, but B is 1, so we don't have to put it. There is a phase shift. It's X minus whatever the value of H is, pi. Close, no value for K, we're done. Now, just to show you what we could have done, that's not the only answer. Like, what do you notice? Let's say we just started here. What do you notice about that one? It's flipped. It didn't shift, it just flipped, didn't it? So what we could do is we could have said, well, instead of this, we'll just put a negative in front of here. It means the same thing. So this is also an acceptable answer. The point I'm trying to make is there's more than one answer. Actually, there's infinite answers. We could have started the sine cycle here and gone like this, and then this would have been the phase shift. So it would have changed this. Any questions so far?
So it doesn't matter where you start it?
What's that?
You can start it wherever?
Yes.
Okay.
But then that's going to change the phase shift, or it might flip. Cosine function, I want you guys to try this one. Remember, K, A, B, C. This one might be a little tricky to find the midline because it's not going to be 0. Oh, sorry. This one, pardon me. I keep forgetting it does that when I change pages. It goes to the bottom of the next page for some reason. Yeah, no, this is the one I want you to do. Did we get K and A? K is? A is? Good. B, the formula is 2 pi over the period. Let's look for a regular sine cycle. I see a regular sine cycle here. So from here to here, it travels 4 notches from start to finish. And if you look at the horizontal axis, 4 notches is pi, isn't it? Or figure out the value of 1 notch. If 4 notches is pi, then halfway is half of pi. And then halfway of that is pi over 2 times 1 over 2, because you times by half, which is pi over 4. Which means you can count the notches. 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, which is pi. So there's 2 ways you could find the period. So the period is actually going to be a number this time besides 1. And finally, H. How did it shift? Remember, normally it's supposed to start on the y-axis at the midline. Normally it's supposed to start here. Where did it start? Here. Or here. So you could say H is negative pi over 4. That works. Or you could say H is 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4 positive. Both are correct. But I'm just going to go to the closest one, which means I had to go back pi over 4. So that's negative. So to write our equation, y equals a, which is 1, which we don't have to write, sine, I'm going to open a bracket or open a big parenthesis, either is fine, because I got a value of b, which is 2, open parentheses, x subtract negative 4 becomes x plus 4, close the parenthesis and then the bracket, no value for k. Wait a minute, sorry. Yeah, sorry. 5 over 4, not 4. Right? Okay, this one. This one let's get together because it's a little tricky to find the midline. Now, if you're good visually, it actually cuts it there at a half. If you have trouble seeing that, there's another way to find k. Take the maximum value, the minimum value, and average them. Add them and divide 2. So the maximum is at 3. The minimum is at negative 2. So 3 plus negative 2, or 3 minus 2 over 2 equals 1/2. That's another way you can find it. So you can either Most of these you'll be able to eyeball, but this one might be a little tricky. So remembering this is a half, what's this distance? 2.5 or 2.5. And you can write 2.5, that's fine. You don't have to write it as a fraction. Just don't write it as the mixed number, 2.5, change it to a decimal. And you can write this as 0.5 if you want. Still correct. Okay. Cosine function starts up high. So here's the start of one. Like so. Heard. What's that? No, it starts at the max, a cosine graph. Sine starts at the midline. Yes. Okay, this one's got quite a few notches in it, doesn't it? So how much is one notch? Again, yes, one notch is pi. Because 4 is 2 pi, half of that, sorry, 4 is 4 pi, half of that is 2 pi, and half of that is 1 pi. So therefore, the period is 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi, 6 pi, 7 pi, 8 pi. That's how long a period takes in this one. So it's going to be 2 pi divide 8 pi, which is, well, pi's cancel, 2 eighths becomes 1/4. Or if you want to write 0.25, that's fine as well. And finally, the shift. It did shift because it didn't start on the y-axis, or the cosine cycle that we chose. It started what? Where? Here, which is, how far is this from here? Negative pi, correct. So our equation is y equals cos. Sorry, we need a value for a 2.5 cos. Open bracket. B is 1/4 or 0.25. It's okay to have a mix of decimals and fractions. And it's still correct. Open parentheses, x minus the shift, which is minus pi, which changes to plus pi. And we got k at the end, which is plus 1/2 or plus 0.5, either one. So that was a pretty involved one. Doing plenty of these because these come with practice. So I want to make sure you have plenty of practice with it. This next one, notice the instruction here says write a sinusoidal function. That means you can write sine or cosine. It's up to you. Okay. I want your scale on the vertical axis here. It's not going up and down by ones because you can see the third one down is -12. and the third one up is positive 12, which means it's going up and down by 4s. Midline, hopefully you can do visually here. Which would be -8. And remember, it's the amplitude is not positive or negative, or sorry, the amplitude is never negative. It's just a positive value. So the distance between here and here, or here and here, 4. Now for B and H, we got to decide whether we want to do sine or cos. Okay. What would you like to do? Cos. Okay. So I see quite a few cos functions. Let's do this one. Starting there, ending there. How long is that? Well, it's 4 notches, and if you look at the horizontal axis, 4 notches is pi. Or you can figure out the value of every notch. Remember, 4 notches is pi. Halfway to that is pi over 2. And half of pi over 2 is pi over 4. And then you can just go 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, which is still pi. So it's 2 pi divided pi, which is 2. The shift. Well, let's continue with this one. How much did it shift from the y-axis? Not pi. Sorry? Pi over 2. Thank you. I can't hear you. All I kept hearing was pi, and then I thought I heard pi. Be committed. You guys know this stuff. Okay, so therefore, our equation would be y equals a 4. We decided on cos. Open bracket b, which is 2. Open parentheses x minus h, which is pi over 2. Close parenthesis, close bracket. Then tack on the k, which is -8. Some other possibilities. Notice, I need different colors. I'm always. Let's try this. Let's do it. Where's my colors? Okay, I think it did it. No. There. Could have done this. Oh, it's very different. Could have done that. That starts on the y-axis, but what happened to the cos? It flipped. So I can take this out because there's no shift because it started on the y-axis, but because it started upside down, negative. So this could be good. Actually, let me just put parentheses. That would be good. If you decided to start sine, here's a sine one. So we could replace this with sine, and the shift would be pi over 4, wouldn't it? Okay, because it only shifted one notch. So we could have said 4 sine 2x minus pi over 4 minus 8. All sorts of options. Okay, the final one. Well, this is, we can just do this first. So in this one, we're asked to write two functions, one with sine in it, one with cosine in it. Right? So K and A will always be the same for both. Always. It's B and H that will change. Okay? Actually, sorry, my mistake. B won't change either. KAB will stay the same. So K, well, K would be 2. A would be, careful, the distance from the mid to the max. 2 to 5 is 3. B. Well, let's start with a sine. So we see a sine starts here and finishes here. The notches, well, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So how much is one notch? 1. Halfway is 5. You don't have to do the halfway thing here. If 10 notches is 10, that means each one must be 1. Each one must be 1. So therefore, the period is starting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The period is 8. Oh, my stuff disappeared. So 2 pi over 8. Which is pi over 4. Now remember, we're doing the sine first. Okay. Well, the cosine graph started here. How much did it shift from the y-axis? 1. Okay. So therefore, in terms of sine, we get y equals A3 sine open bracket B, pi over 4, open parenthesis, x minus h, which is 1, close parenthesis, close bracket, plus 2. What if we did cosine? Where do you see a regular cosine graph starting? 3. So it starts at 3. So it shifted 3 to the right. So therefore, if we're doing cosine, okay, right, this is sine, this is cosine. Y equals 3 cosine, everything else stays the same, we just shift, or we just change h. So it becomes x minus 3. To get that. Okay. So I didn't realize it. I don't know. Yeah, that's good. You just never know. Well, you have 4 possible equations. Oh boy. All right, well, see what the graph looks like. So it has a maximum point at 0, 4. So it starts here. The next minimum point is at pi over 4, comma negative 2. Now, if you think about it, this is going to start going down, right? Because it's a maximum point. The next notch, will be to the midline, won't it? Right? It's the second notch that goes to the minimum. So this one is pi over 4. Because our second notch goes to the minimum, or goes to the midline, wherever that is. We haven't figured it out yet. But the notch after that goes there. Sorry, there. Negative. I don't think it's straight. Okay. So where's the midline? Well, again, you could do 4 plus negative 2 divide 2. Max plus min divide 2, which gives you 1. So that means the midline is going to be there. So that means there's a point here. And it goes like this. And it continues on. Like that. So K is what's K? 1. A is 3. B. Well, one period I see a cosine here. One period is 4 notches long, right? We know that 2 notches is pi over 4. How much is 1 notch if 2 notches is pi over 4? Pi over 8. Always just, when you take half, you just times the denominator by 2. So that means the period is going to be 1 pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, 3 pi over 8, 4 pi over 8. And 4 pi over 8 is the same as pi over 2. So that means it's going to be 2 pi, or 2 pi over 1, times the reciprocal of pi over 2. The pi's cancel, and we're left with 4. B is 4. Let's assume we're doing a cosine graph because that's what we recognize. What's h? 0. Because it starts on the y-axis, right? So let's just do that one. We're just going to do this one. I'm not going to worry about the other 3. Because really, you wouldn't be asked a question specifically like this. You would be asked, you could be asked a question like this, but you would be asked to write 1, not 4. And that's I've never seen a question on the provincial that's been worth more than 4 marks. So what does it look like? Y equals 3 cos bracket 4 x, because there's no shift, bracket, and then plus 0, which I don't have to write, plus 1. Oh, sorry, I was looking at h. And you put the bracket in me. Good. Ditch. Okay, there we go. We'll leave it at that. So for